Okay.
Okay, everybody. Hello. Thank you so much for coming. Today, there's only two people in the room at the moment. More may come along, but we're starting right at 7:01. But you may be watching this recording at some point in the future. So this is part two of a two parts workshop, which is all about creating an IT risk management checklist for your business. So we've kind of expanded on that original title a bit, talking about business continuity planning and other things, but we are talking about IT risk. So I'm going to share my slides. Hi, Helen, how are you? Good, good. Oh, sharing my own screen. I'm trying to give sharing responsibilities to somebody else, and it's me. All right, so let's jump into it. I would encourage you to watch the last session. I just spent the afternoon watching our last session to remind myself what we talked about. And what we talked about at the last time was also about, I might just click back here. I think we had our homework somewhere. We would talk, so let's just go back over it. So we were talking about, so this all forms part of your business continuity plan. The template is available. We're talking about understanding risks. So when we're talking about risk, we've got the likelihood of that risk. So remember, we've got the likelihood of the risk, and then we've got the impact of that risk. So the likelihood of me falling over in my office, it was actually quite high, really, when we think about it. The impact of that is it could be low, moderate, severe, or high. The likelihood of me falling down the stairs is probably a medium. It has happened before, and yes, I have, and the impact was actually quite severe when I did it the last time I fell down the stairs. But so we're thinking about the likelihood of it and the impact, and then we do, then in terms of assessing risk, we have likelihood times impact equals the level. And so that level will give you an indication of how quickly you must move to develop strategies to ensure that you either prevent that thing from happening, or you're planning for when it happens, what you're going to do in that in the event that it does happen. So for instance, flooding obviously is something that happens quite often in some areas of Queensland, so you don't really have to, should prepare for it, because it is going to happen, and it probably happens annually. Now Eddie and I did have, well, this focus of this workshop and the last workshop obviously is about information technology. Eddie and I did have a debate on camera about, his suggestion is that because we were talking at the time about all of the data of our organization, which is online, I assessed it as being 8 high, but his assessment, because, so I assessed it at high, so I said it was a medium likelihood and it would be severe. So likelihood times impact equals the level of risk is high at 8. So if I follow the table, I think the table says it's an 8, but Eddie suggested though that it is actually severe because it would require immediate action. It is something that would be quite catastrophic for the organization. That is in, if our cloud servers were, our cloud storage, our data was compromised in any way. So what that does is, if we suggest that it's severe, it means that we need to do something about it immediately, and we need to make sure we are prepared, but also but before being prepared for it to happen, doing everything we can do to prevent it actually happening. And then in the last part of the workshop, we actually talked about, you can't really prepare or prevent things happening in your information technology part of your business if you actually don't understand what you have. And so what we've done today is I wanted to share, and so we talked a little bit about that at the end. So if you've watched the last video, Karen from Agora and I were talking about, well, what actually do you have? You can't prevent things from happening if you actually don't know what you've got. And I'm just going to admit Karen, she's just turned up, which is great. So what I've done is I've actually gone through and started unpacking what we have in our company. So the next 2 slides I'm going to share with you. Oh, before I start, I apologize, sincerely apologize, because this is the one slide deck from last month. My acknowledgement of country, I apologize, is actually on after my first slide. So it's 20 slides before this. So I just want to, of course, acknowledge country and acknowledge the unceded sovereignty of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people across the country. I'm coming to you from Meanjin or Brisbane, and I acknowledge the countries from where you're coming from today in the room, but also where you're coming from if you're viewing this, watching this video at some point in the future. And I also acknowledge TAFE Queensland for their ongoing support of this project. I apologise for that misstep. So let's unpack what we have in IM. So this first, what you've got to do, and so Eddie might jump in here at some point as well, but what we're doing in this table is where we don't have all of these positions in the business, in our business. But what we've done is we've started unpacking the different roles that there are and the different arms of the business. So we have a creative business, the creative arm of Iscariot Media, and then we have the training arm. And then we've got
to be more specific, we don't have an individual in any of these given roles. So there's, as with most small businesses, if you're one person, you do every single one of these things. If you're two people, maybe it's split 50-50. So you'll never, in a small business, it's rare that you'll have a dedicated person for any individual thing. It doesn't mean that that role doesn't exist. So that's sort of what we're trying to show.
Yep. And I think this is really useful. And I've been doing a bit of training recently in another program talking about you know, as you do quite often do start as a single person in your business, and then as you grow, hopefully you'll stay in business long enough, have a little bit of extra money left over that you can actually start to either outsource or bring in expertise of those particular elements of the business that you don't want to do. So what we've got here is we've got our operation, but at the outset, obviously, you are doing everything yourself. But what we've got here, you can see here, we've got operational. So that's on the left, and we've kind of divided it. We've divided into sort of 3 sections. So there's like financial, administration, support. Then we've got creative. So we actually do have an illustrator, we have an animator, a graphic designer, a comms officer, and we have the creative director, and probably project support also. And then in the training, we've got sort of like a training director. We've got some trainers, trainer administration, and trainer support. But so what we've done in this diagram is really think about what all of those organizational roles are. In your business continuity plan, which I should bring up in, I'll bring that up in a second and put it on another screen. In your business continuity plan, you're also required to look at the business, critical business activities. So what are the activities of the business? And I'll just show you the one, I'll just bring this over here so you should be able to see it. So this is just the one that I've submitted as our business. So we've got, so in this section, we look at IM's critical business activities. During the business continuity plan review, update the table as required. So you can see here, for ease of, this was for an assignment. So, and we're going to be working on it in real life. So for the assignment, I just wrote that we had one critical activity, but we actually might say 2. We've got probably a sales activity, which is around dark and disturbing retail sales. Well, it's not retail, online sales. So you're starting to think about what all of those critical activities are of your business. So for you, Karen, it might be around delivering workshops. It might be consultancy, those kinds of things. Then in the next activity, then in the next slide, so I want to show you, how does this relate to IT? How does this actually relate to IT? Well, it was kind of funny. So as I started doing this diagram, so we've got Google, and then before you know it, as I was thinking about it, before you know it, there were, I forgot that one, and we've got Bitwarden, we've got security, we've got, MailChimp, we've got all of the domains that we've bought over the years, and so suddenly, as you start brainstorming and brain dumping all of the different technology that you're using, suddenly that list gets very, very big. And so this is we have literally just touched the surface. This is like an hour of Eddie and I were doing this afternoon for about an hour. and really just started to go, okay, what are all of the things that we have? So if you have a look here, and this is really important for your IT, thinking about your IT systems. So let's use an example. So we used this as an example last month when we did the first workshop. Remember we were talking about Google Workspace, and so Eddie is a super admin. Amanda and I are admins, and then you've got the users. So the next level of unpacking this is now going, okay, Google Docs or Google Sheets, Google Workspace. What we're going to talk to, oh, my phone thinks I'm talking to Google. Hold on, I just have to turn it off. No, I don't actually want to talk to Google. Thank you. You know, we would actually list here who is the super admin, because if something happens to Eddie.
But not specifically. We're not going to list the person who is the super admin.
Yes.
You would go back to the previous slide and you would take the role and you would say, oh, my IT administrator is going to be utilizing Google Docs and he's going to be the super admin. And it doesn't matter who that person, that actual named person is, you've got to take the role and say that the role is going to be that person, because the person who is in that role may change in the future. You might no longer be the admin. You might hand it off to someone else. But it still doesn't change the fact that that role has to exist and that role is required to utilize these programs and have these permissions to do these things.
And I think what's really useful too, thanks for that clarification, Eddie. I think what's really useful too is over the years, I have bought domains, and then Eddie joined the company and he's buying domains. And then suddenly it's like, oh, actually, we've got domains in lots of different areas. So the opportunity now is, once we start unpacking this, going, okay, let's bring this all into some sort of order. Like, they can still be across different companies, and there's value. There's actually reasons why you might do that. But actually putting that under a specific role. You know, some of it's under my name, some of it's under Eddie's name, some of it might be under another staff member's name. So the opportunity now is to start consolidating things and start making sure that different technologies are with the right roles. At the moment, it's because of the way that the company's just grown, it's kind of pretty ad hoc, sort of, oh, we'll do this now. I'll do it. Don't worry about it. You're too busy. I'll go over and do it, and I'll start that thing. But now what we want to do is we actually want to get it under the right role, under the correct roles, or under the roles that actually make sense. So I just wanted to show you that as something that you might do to help you do your thinking. Now, obviously, I'm doing a presentation, so I've done it in a Google slide deck. I wouldn't do it in a Google slide deck if I wasn't doing a presentation. I'd actually probably just use a spreadsheet. Eddie, what tool do you use?
For something like this, I would use Microsoft Visio, which is a dedicated tool to make diagrams.
So I'm just typing that Visio. Is it VISIO? VIS?
Yes.
Yeah, so I was just typing that in the yes, Helen. So Helen's just asked about job descriptions. So I would, if our company has the ability to grow, this is, I don't know how, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, that's like over 20 employees. Absolutely. I mean, we could be, the reality is that, our accounting and our bookkeeper, we actually outsource that at the moment. Our HR is done by the same person who's doing a little bit of support work and a bit of project work. We know that our creative director does some admin work as well, also jumps in with the training. Like, we know that certain people are doing things, but ideally your job descriptions would certainly match what it is that or at least be striving towards getting to this point. Now, you may not get to that point. Again, I come back to your business. Your business is, the way that you see your business growing is up to you. It's not up to anybody else to decide, but that would certainly be something that you might want to do. So yes, I've done this in a presentation mode just because I'm doing a presentation. I would absolutely do this in another piece of software. This is hard, trying to make everything line up and make it pretty, like make it legible and visible, visual. Was a bit frustrating. But I think, you get the idea. Karen, does that make sense? Is it something that you guys could do? Sorry, you're having dinner, darling. Sorry. Yep, you've just given me a thumbs up. That's great. You can yarn later. All right, so let's get back into it. So again, we're talking about risk management and we're talking about software. IT. So we want to identify different types of risks. So using IT obviously is something that's really useful. And I was thinking about it today. You know, it's funny talking about all of this stuff. But back in the olden days when we all had offices and our business would have been in a single place probably, the secure and this is the problem with being a virtual business. So we're virtual, and all of it's almost like a distributed model as well. Oh, sorry, if you're watching, you won't be able to see the chat, but Eddie did suggest if you don't want to, there's a free version. Go on, Ed.
Yeah, it's just Visio but free essentially. It's another diagramming thing called Draw.io.
Draw, so DRAU.io is another tool that you can use to create these kinds of diagrams. Thanks, Ed.
Yep.
If you don't want to use Visio, Microsoft Visio, which is VISIO, which obviously is a subscription-based one. I can't remember what I was talking about. Oh yes, so that's right. So if back in the we're a distributed company, so we have staff in North Queensland, in Logan, we have Moretonshire, couple of people in different parts of Brisbane, but we all work in the same company during the day. So we're just a normal company, except our offices are all in different places in our homes. And so if something happens to one company member, in the olden days, someone would have walked over to their desk and turned their computer on. Oh, well, actually, maybe, or looked in their filing cabinet. So your security and your access to the files of the business were in those filing cabinets over there. And all you had to do was get into the filing cabinet and you would have all the data of the organization. This is thinking about before computers. So we're thinking about this is about kind of get at this conceptual understanding of what we're talking about. In the olden days, all you needed was the key to the building or the key to the filing cabinet. And if, you know, something happened to the owner, you know, overnight, and you had to open the office the next day, you could get a crowbar and open the filing cabinet, and the business could technically possibly still run okay. What's the digital version of that? You know, so this is thinking about how the business is structured. So what's the digital version of all of us as employees putting all of our work product, leaving it at the office at the end of the day? For us as an organization, that is having everything in the cloud. So Will, who is our graphic designer, so he's there during the day working on his graphic designs. Back in the olden days, if he was sick one day, we could literally jump onto his computer or onto his desk and we would have all these files because he wouldn't take it home. The digital version of that is he needs to, at the end of every day, put everything into the cloud, work straight up to the cloud, so that if he's sick one day, somebody else in the office, in the virtual office, can go and access it. So we're really thinking about how we prevent things from happening, how we prevent business disruption. So that's a term I want you to think about. A lot of this work that we're talking about is about preventing disruption, and things will disrupt our business like floods. So poor Karen, we talked about last month, obviously, we talked about her last month. An example of her business is they're literally had to leave their home for, I don't know, probably 6 months, which is where you were conducting your business. So you literally, because of Cyclone Jasper, wasn't it? Yeah, you think of all of those people in Wujal who literally had to leave their homes because they were flooded out. So that's that kind of thing. So what we're trying to prevent is business disruption due to unexpected or preventable reasons, due to disasters. So IT helps us to complete tasks. However, it can also introduce risks of a serious IT failure that may result in your business needing to cease trading. Identifying types of risk will help you complete your business continuity plan, which is what we're talking about. So some of those IT risks that could impact your business, things like hardware and software failures. You may need an IT expert to help, to get you back on track. you may have malware, you may have viruses. So there's some of the IT risks that you have. You may also have spam, scams, and phishing. I told the story last in part 1 of this workshop about how Amanda was someone was pretending to be me messaging her, which could have resulted in I don't know what they would have asked to try and get control of something, but they were trying. We worked out that it wasn't real because she actually called me on the phone, which is interesting if you've got people able to fake voices now. Anyway, I was saying to Eddie, I think at that point we need a safe word that only her and I know. So I was like, yes, that's definitely her. Human error. So accidentally opening an email containing viruses, natural disasters, floods, storms, and bushfires that may interrupt your service within the business or to external suppliers. So was it earlier this year? Optus had that big outage. Was that this year?
I thought that was last year.
It could have been last year. So we are with Optus in our house, so we were uncontactable for that period. Actually, I don't know if we were completely uncontactable, but
internet still worked. We're not with Optus for internet.
Yeah. Although sometimes, even though we are in Brisbane City, sometimes it's actually quicker for me. I can only access the internet I have to hotspot from my computer off my phone because the house internet is sometimes not great. So it's actually better for me to use my phone. I've done whole webinars just coming off my phone. So if that was the case, it would have been pretty tricky. You may also have criminal IT threats such as ransomware, hackers, and fraud. I don't really need to go through all of those. Other things, password theft, people stealing your login credentials, denial of service, security breaches, staff dishonesty. So that's people stealing data or sensitive information such as customer details. So there's some of the things that can threaten, from an IT perspective, your business. And a lot of those things are actually, a lot of those things are preventable through training, through everybody having two-factor authentication. I think I've got a slide about that later. But sometimes I do want to say, though, as much as it's preventable, even big companies get compromised. If big companies get compromised, don't feel bad if you get compromised as well and you're a small organization. So I don't want you to feel bad about it if you do get compromised. Yeah, it's not necessarily your fault. So what you want to do is you want to, as part of this project, as part of this work of being prepared, is really thinking about and going through some of those worst case scenarios. What if this happened? So what if we lost power supply to our house? What will we do then? We've got a big meeting this afternoon. We're going to run a webinar, or we've got a meeting with a client when we need to present a pitch so we can get a job, and suddenly the power goes out. Amanda lives in an area of Brisbane that has very unreliable, in the area of Southeast Queensland, that has unreliable access to the internet. And I know she's done pitches from her car, hotspotting off her phone somewhere else in the suburbs. It's like on the side of the road. She's done pitches to clients in her car. So what if you have no power? Because they've literally lost power supply. They have unreliable power supply. That's what you do. Like, do you have a solution to that? Do you have something that you can do? Because again, that is a form of interrupted business. There's a version of interrupted business. What happens if I wake up tomorrow and I turn my computer on and for some reason my password doesn't work? What do I do then? I would be very, very nervous because I've got workshops on. That's how could I even contact anybody? If I can't get if I get lost access, I can't even call anybody because I don't have their phone numbers. It's all in my email. If I don't have access to my email, what would I do next? Oh, that just gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. What if key financial documents were destroyed? What would you do then? How would you get on? It's probably not so much of an issue because our documents live in Xero. So if something happened to our Xero account, what would you do if your premises were were damaged. That doesn't necessarily bother us at the moment because, actually, if my house is damaged, so long as I can go and get a computer and I remember my passwords, I should be okay. So Helen's got another one. So what if your Facebook page was hacked and that is how you sell your products? Exactly. What do you do then? How do you get back in? What have you done to prevent that? If you don't have two-factor authentication, if you rely on social media accounts for your business activities, you absolutely need to have every layer of security that you can have. What if one of your staff with extensive IT knowledge left the business? It would be very difficult for me for a very long time if Eddie decided to leave the business. Eddie, you're not allowed to go anywhere.
Yeah, righto.
Thank you for that. To help you identify, again, some more examples. What if staff brought their own devices to work and downloaded company software and accessed work-sensitive data on the device? Now, that's actually interesting because most of our company already are actually using their own devices, so that's pretty tricky. Because, yeah, there's pros and cons for that, and probably something that we need to continue to review. What if staff don't know about cybersecurity and how to prevent malware and phishing? That's something that you can prevent or go to a degree to prevent by just doing training. What if your staff had access to your electronic banking logins? What if your staff shared passwords? We do a bit of that. We share passwords, but through Bitwarden. So, but not for some things. That we don't share absolutely everything. We share certain things. Is that written down in a policy? Probably not. No staff have access to. Only Eddie and I have access to the bank accounts. But there are other things. If a staff member was having a bad day and decided to quit and decided to take it all down with them, they could do some damage. So yeah, there's a lot of trust there. Should we be they're big questions you need to ask yourself. What happens if you don't have two-factor authentication on your business software? Very, very scary stuff. And it takes time. I think I said this at the last in the last workshop, if you remember. I talked about how this is really about a cultural shift, and it takes a while to shift culture, and it takes a while to shift culture and knowledge and understanding around things like this stuff. But remember, give yourself a break if you don't quite get it, but just think it is just another version of having a key to an office and a key to a filing cabinet. Are there any questions? Has anybody got any questions or comments? You can jump in. If it's okay if you don't. Oh, Helen.
I was going to say, when we talked before about that job description thing, it'd actually be more of a role description, wouldn't it? More than a job description.
Yeah, it's a role description. That's what you should be. You should be doing is you should be doing role descriptions, because, like I said, you can have multiple roles.
Yeah,
and you can also have multiple people in a given role as well.
Correct.
Depending on the role. Obviously, probably not going to have 2 CTOs, but you can have many people being trainers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Cool. This is the model that, so if the resources that I've been sharing, and a lot of this information comes from the Queensland Government. I'm not going to reinvent any wheels. The Queensland Government, business.qld.gov.au. I think that's the URL, businessqueensland.gov.au. Yeah, Business Queensland. This is their model that they have adopted. Yeah, business.qld.gov.au. This is the model of risk management that they use, and they use it in their business continuity plan. So this is the model, which is PPRR. Prevention, making sure everybody's trained. Preparedness, making sure you know what to do if something goes wrong. Response, which is jumping into action when something goes wrong. And recovery is recovering from the thing that's happened. So it's the PPRR model. And this model helps you to identify identify risks, and to think about, and I think for me, this exercise has been really valuable because it's making us look for the gaps. It's making us go, oh, actually, we should probably do that better. Oh, or also, there are some things that we're doing. We've got one new staff member in particular, I think that job should sit underneath their role or underneath their job. That role should sit under that job, whichever one it is. Just thinking, oh, actually, we could hand over that responsibility to that person simply because it actually fits, but that role didn't exist 12 months ago. So just really, it's a really good opportunity for you to start asking yourself questions about how prepared you are for your business to be sustainable, for your business to be reliable, for your business to grow in the future. So by preparing policies and procedures that all of your staff can follow, and this is a challenge for us. We actually physically only get together probably 4 times a year. We're talking to each other every day, but we're actually not physically in the room. And you know, you've got to give people time to onboard these things. If we were in the same room, we could probably all have morning tea together. We could probably do that virtually as well. It's just, yeah, I don't know that would work, but you know, we could be, hey, we would have notices on a notice board. We would put signs on desks and things like that, which is it's possible in a virtual environment, but also a bit trickier as well. So, you know, there are things that you can do in a real environment that you can't do in a virtual environment. So some of the policies that you want to have for your for IT policies or elements of your IT policy, you want to have a policy for use of software. So what we can license, installation and usage. So we have software that is company licensed that sits on personal devices. We recently had a staff member leave, and the day after they left, we turned the license off. So, you know, that should be a policy that's written down. It's not, but that should be written down. Bring your own device policy. So I don't think we have that written down anywhere. Bring your own device policy. I don't think any of you guys, it's ever been communicated with anybody, but we should have a policy around that. Information technology security policy, electronic transactions policy. That probably doesn't matter too much because at the moment only, I think pretty much Eddie and I do the electronic transactions. I think Helen does a little bit. And emergency management of information technology. So what do we do? So we need to have policies for these things. And that's definitely a project that we're working on this year. So in the event of hardware failure, in the event of point of sale disruptions, in the event of a virus or other security breaches, in the event of a website disruption. So Karen's just asked the question, how would you do audits given that people work across the state? And Eddie's response, it would be complicated. I definitely think it's complicated. I think that there's I don't know, Eddie, you can jump in. You can remote into people's devices.
Yeah, you would have to obtain remote access, or there's when you run a full remote organization, there has to be an implicit level of trust in your staff. And there's not really anything you can do to get away from it, which is why you see companies like banks pushing back really hard on full remote work, because there are so many issues around it for certain organizations. Like, you're probably never going to see anyone with high level security clearance working from home. It's just not going to happen. So it entirely depends on, well, not just depend, but whether or not you feel the need to do those kinds of audits depends on the industry that you're working in and your appetite for that level of risk. If you can't handle that level of risk, then maybe a full remote environment like we have is not appropriate. Like, there's things you can do to mitigate it. You could have staff issued devices and require everything to be done via that device and stuff like that. But it makes things more expensive. You'll get the reason you go to remote work is there are cost savings to be had and there's flexibility to be had, and that comes at the cost of risk. To run a completely in-person organization is inherently going to cost more, but you take on a lower level of risk. So yeah, there's not really anything you can do about it. And it's like, well,
I think there are things that you can do. I think what we could do is do
there's things you can do about it, but it doing them is complicated. Like I'd have to issue
but I think you do things like, okay, so let's have a checklist. A really simple checklist that says, do you have the following things? Tick 1. And so people can say, yes, I've got 2FA enabled. Let's do a practice run. So actually, I think part of the issue for a small business like ours is honestly, it's just about time. Finding the time in the week when and particularly now, it's you know what? Actually, I don't know if I'll say this out loud. Actually, I'm going to say it out loud, but I think right now would be a great, if I was a bad guy, right now is a great time to go and try and jump into things. Like actually, because particularly if you're in a service industry and your biggest client is government, there's a really good chance that everybody is flat out and they're just going to be paying invoices because it's like, oh, here's an invoice, going to pay it out. And so if you're a bad guy and you're like, I'm going to send an invoice to that company, let's see if they pay. And you've got a list of, 1,000 businesses and you send them an invoice for something, and it could even just be for like $50, $50, $100, $95. Oh yeah, quick, just pay it because you want to get it out the door before the 30th of June. It's a perfect time to make a quick 90 grand. It would be perfect because I reckon the percentage of people that would pay it, and if it's small enough for people just to go, oh yeah, she'll be right, I'll just pay this. That I think it's a perfect time. It's ripe now for the picking for people. And so I don't know how I got into that, but like really having processes so that people can just having checklists so that Kelly can go, oh yes, I've got this. Have you got a comfortable chair? Yes. Have you got proper lighting? Yes, I have. Just so that we know that Kelly knows that these are the things that we think are important. She's agreed that they are important. She's gone through and made sure that all of those things, that she's done those things. So that actually, sorry, Kelly, but that actually puts some of the risk back onto Kelly because Kelly's agreed that she's going to follow the procedures. It's like a toolbox talk almost, like if you're going in a trade, make sure you do X, Y, and Z before you go onto a work site, that sort of stuff. Yeah, but I think that this is an area, and like I'm sharing this because we're a small business too. And part of our one business ethos is that, well, we're small business owners and we have all of the same challenges that you have. And I think, well, yes, that's right, Karen. So Karen's just said, I think this is interesting. Does Kelly believe it is important, because perhaps she may not think it's important? Well, that's part of the trust. Like as part of our process of bringing people on, we would be saying, look, we're a virtual company. You need to follow these particular rules. Things like, be online at 8:30 in the morning. You can log off at, the standard day is 8:30 to 4:30. We've just changed it from 9 to 5 to 8:30 to 4:30. Be online for the majority of the day. You use your these are the things that we need. And I think that in about a year's time, what I would love to do is a talk like this this is what we've learned from growing a virtual business, because you have to, you can't, and I'm going off the IT topic, but yeah, because we've had folks who've really, Kelly, just using you as an example. Sorry, Kelly. Kelly's like, why are you picking on me? We've had folks who've not really leaned into the virtual and it just hasn't worked for them. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, and if someone can't handle that level of essentially what would be reporting requirements, really, and
autonomy
and both autonomy and the things that are associated with that. Like if they can't cope with doing things the way they need to do them in that environment, they need to be babysit the whole time. Maybe the organization just isn't a fit for them. It's as simple as that.
That's right.
And that comes back to stuff like performance management and things like that. Like if you don't log on at 8 in the morning or 8:30 in the morning, whatever you happen to have your start time set, then you're late for grounds for performance management. Simple as that.
So just coming back to the topic, we'll talk about creating a virtual team in a couple
Another
of
day.
other day. It's a different topic. Always going off track. But they're really good questions, Karen. So thank you, and we'll keep that. Well, let's keep that one alive for future topics. But so what are some of the practical things that you can do? So the practical steps you can take to improve IT security within your business, including securing your computers, servers, wireless networks, using antivirus and anti-software spyware protection. We actually don't use that. We all have we keep our devices up to date. Using data backups that include offsite and remote storage. So Eddie talked a little bit about that last month in part 1 of this workshop. Other things include securing your passwords, 2-factor authentication. Sorry, I go on about it all the time. It's pain. It's really annoying, 2-factor authentication, but we have to do it. Training your staff in IT policies and procedures. I think this is an area that we can still get a lot better in. Using SSL on websites, that's pretty much a no-brainer now. I think everybody does that. I remember when I used to talk about SSL, but we don't really talk about it because it's just there. Understanding your legal obligations for online business. I think that there is also a new legislation coming out around privacy laws and privacy breaches that normally our small businesses would be exempt from, but that law is changing. So we will have to book in a session on privacy laws because anybody who is operating a business will be subject to those laws. So we need to make sure that nobody is going to be in breach of that. That's on my to-do list of things to find out more about. And as soon as I get that information, we will be doing it as well. And we will be sharing that with all of you as well. The other thing that you can do is get insurance. I have to double check my insurance and make sure we're covered. I think we are. I did ask for it from our insurance broker. So I've got to double check that one, as well as training your staff. So staff can be the first and last line of defense against an IT threat. So investing the time for initial and ongoing training is good preventative measure to avoid risks occurring. And that's what I was talking about before. Our biggest enemy in a small business like ours, and it would be in probably your businesses as well, is time. Is finding the time to do all of these things. This is this constant battle between working on your business and in your business. When you're in your business, you're actually working and serving clients and, making the food orders and pushing the food out. And if you're in a restaurant, that's in your business. You're working, you're the chef or you're the waiter and you've got the chef, like you're actually in the business. But finding time to then work on the business to make sure that all of the business stuff is functioning, like your marketing and your IT and your policy development, that's extra time. And we are all really busy. And this time of the year is particularly bad in terms of time. We have no time at the moment for any of those extra things because we're so busy delivering before the end of financial year. So I think that's one of our biggest flaws as a small business. So updating staff and training manuals, we have to do that. At some point in the future. It's on our list of things to do. So always being aware of any new risks when new risks or threats are introduced, any changes that have occurred to risk, sharing examples of fraud so that staff can better identify them. When Amanda got that message the other day, as soon as we realized what it was, I immediately sent a message out on Slack to all the team going, don't respond to any SMSs or WhatsApp messages or anything. If it's not through Slack, it's not us. And creating a strong cybersecurity culture among our staff. So I think we're pretty much at that point where we're not sharing passwords through Messenger or SMS. We're not emailing passwords and usernames. I know we've done that in the past, and sometimes clients really do struggle, and we have had to do it, which is really disappointing. But as soon as we share it, we're like, you need to change this as soon as we've done this. So thinking about that other element, that other stage, let's talk about responding to incidents. So responding to an incident and recovery planning. So IT incidents may be the result of a wider crisis. So it may not be about your 2-factor authentication. It could be because there's an explosion or a bushfire or a flood. And in any emergency situation, the safety of your staff and your members of the public should always be your first priority. So if something's happening, get the staff out now. Don't Don't worry about don't go grabbing your handbag. Don't take your phone. Like, I'd say take your phone. My phone's rarely out of my hand, so I would always have my phone on me. But you know, we can replace a phone, we can replace a computer. We cannot replace you. I used to say that to the kids when balls used to go and playing with balls and the balls go on the road. I say, I can replace the ball. I'll go and buy you a new ball, but I can't replace you. An IT incident response plan should support any emergency response plan that you've developed. So a broader response plan, so it's part of your response plan. If an IT incident or crisis occurs, having a recovery plan in place will help to reduce the business's recovery time. So we're trying to get back to normal business as quickly as possible, because every day, every hour that you're out of business, you are losing money. A plan may include strategies for the business to begin operating in the quickest time possible, a list of key resources and equipment required to return to operations, and your recovery time objectives. And I've got a quick example here. So we've got a cyber attack. Yes, definitely. So Karen's just put in this chat, workers' safety. Absolutely. No H&S. Absolutely. Your physical safety is the most important thing, because we can buy a new computer. We can't buy a new you. So this is an example. So we've got our preventative and recovery actions, resource requirements. So if we have a cyber attack, identify the source of the breach, set up new systems, communicate with stakeholders and suppliers that a breach has occurred. So I actually have in our business continuity plan. Let me see if I've got it in here. Business continuity plan. So I actually have, so I've got who are the responsibilities? So these are some of Eddie's responsibilities. These are some of Amanda's responsibilities. I think this is if I pass away. So there's different responsibilities there. But I also have in here somewhere, I can't remember which page it's on, but who do we contact? So we need to contact our insurance company. We need to contact anybody who we are on a panel for. So I've got the Queensland Government Procurement Panel. We contact our local chamber, our accountant. I'll take some of those phone numbers in there. Contact all of those people to make sure that they're the first people that we contact. So we should probably have a list of suppliers. So if we have Kelly, we don't have this, do we? But if we had, say, for example, live jobs, it would be really useful to have a list of live job contacts. So these are the jobs that we've got going on at the moment. Here are all the email addresses for all the jobs that are happening at the moment. So if something happens to Amanda or something happens, we've had a breach, we can quickly go and email all of those 10 live jobs that we have, because it's like in that moment of crisis, you're like, oh, who's that job for? What's her name again? I can't remember everybody's names anymore. What's that name again? Who's that person? You know, and you're in the middle of this crisis, and you may even be grieving. Like you're literally grieving. You're not going to remember those people's names. So I don't know, Kelly, if this would work, but maybe it's something we can have a talk about. Is like, so if we've got jobs on at the moment, and tomorrow at 10 a.m. something happened, could we whip out an email at 1 p.m. and go, we want to notify you that X has happened. We are currently in shutdown mode, and we will resume normal trading as quickly as we possible. We will keep you in touch. Like
I've just added it to my to-do list.
Great. So even writing that letter, Kelly, that letter. So in April 2021, when we had an incident, and we had to do that email out, it's like, you're sitting there absolutely in your grieving, and you're writing a professional letter. Imagine if we had a professional letter written, so we don't have to do it at that point, you know, when you're in the middle of all of the emotion of that. So just thinking of some of those, and I think the more that we talk about it, and the more that we kind of share things that have happened, Karen, you must have some things that you would do, knowing what you know now, having gone through the last 6 months. Like you guys would have so much that you could share. I reckon you could probably do a whole presentation about things that you've learned post-flood. That would be really interesting. I think you went to, did you mean to come off mute then?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. We would there's a lot, particularly when you work from home and you can no longer be in your premises, and from the internet, when you're relying on internet from your home
Yeah.
to all of a sudden being somewhere else, and then hotspotting, and then if you're also traveling and also providing doing presentations. So there's a lot. I think there's a lot we've learned, and we I don't think, obviously we weren't prepared for that, but it's a lesson to learn. And it's interesting because being in the Cairns region, it doesn't actually matter where we are in Australia, but I think disaster management is really disaster preparedness is really important for all businesses. Even and perhaps maybe this is an issue, is that because we work from home or online, we'd probably forget about what the impact can actually still have on those businesses, and it's quite significant. So yeah, thank you.
At some point in the future, when everything's calmed down, maybe, if you want to write some of those ideas down, some of those experiences down in a presentation, we'd love to have even just have a lunch and learn about it, because the wet season will be here before we know it.
True.
Sorry. Sorry to say it like that, but yes, it'll be back. It's coming back again. And so the other thing that we've got here, so just in terms of resources and requirements, put aside some cash reserves to cover costs. We're very lucky at the moment. Like at the moment doesn't always mean it's going to be like that. But if one of our team, say for instance, if Rachel, who lives at Logan, if something happens to one of her, she lives kind of remote in a regional part of Logan. If she has a bushfire and her computer goes down, Eddie could order a computer today from where we are on this side of Brisbane, and it'd be there tomorrow, probably. Like we have enough cash reserves to go, oh, you need a computer, Eddie can have it ordered within half an hour and it's on its way. So we're actually really lucky to have that. We haven't always had that, I can tell you now, but we have that now. And that's just that's peace of mind, knowing that we have those cash reserves. And so that's something that you want to try to have as well, is like, do you have actually cash in the bank so that if something happens, you can do what you need to do to get back and but also ensuring you have a list of suppliers and stakeholders easy to access. So that's what I was suggesting before. Like I don't know who would maintain that list. It's probably a list. It's funny because we have a list of jobs, so we know what we're working on, and they're all in individual folders in our drive. But in order to have a list prepared within the next 15 minutes, you've got to go into every individual drive. That's coming back to, and see, this is what I want to talk about. Like, this is coming back to this diagram. It's really thinking about all of the organizational roles. Whose job is it to do that? What technology can we use to go, this is what we're going to do? It's probably a CRM, a customer relationship management system. Like it's probably that kind of thing that we just don't have at the moment because nothing bad has happened. So yeah, well, it has, but we kind of managed it. Recovery time objectives. So we're within a cyber attack, we want to be back on track and back at work within 1 week. Edward is responsible, and then completed. We would say completed by what date. So this is an example of the sort of thinking that you need to do in your IT management, risk management strategy that you're going to put into your business continuity plan. Okay, so that is the guts of my presentation. It's a lot of content. It's kind of scary, but I think that it is all very doable. It's all very doable. It's just time and a commitment to doing those things. And I think that by doing that, you have a better chance of actually growing your business to the point about so that you can actually grow and you can work through those times when it all hits the fan. So Helen says, what about an asset list? So you know what computers are where. So if someone had lost a computer, you know who is supposed to claim it on whose insurance. So yes, this is an issue with everybody using their own devices. Whose insurance is paying for what? If Helen's using her own computer and Helen gets broken into, whose insurance is going to pay for that? And that replacement of that, probably Helen's home and contents insurance, making sure that that's okay though with your insurance company. Like, you've been using it for work. Is it covered? I suspect we have not answered that question. So there you go. We've just identified another question.
And just an asset register if you're for businesses in general. I know when I work for different companies, you have an asset register, what's on site. But if you've got different facets of your,
well, that's the problem. So Eddie has a list of Scarrett Media assets,
but it's incomplete. And
It's
the thing
not.
about those things is that they're great and all, but someone has to maintain it.
And we also don't have Helen's personal computer that she's using right now, I think, on that asset list, because it's not our asset, it's your asset. Yeah. Yes. Although, over time, if something happens to your computer, Eddie, Helen, I think Eddie will just replace it with one of ours. I think that's probably the way it's going. It's the way that seems to be going. As all of your personal devices disappear, we just replace them with ours. Yeah. But, so it's nearly 8 o'clock. That's
I have
part
a
2.
really small question.
Small is good.
SSL. I know it's something I should know, but what exactly is that, and am I doing it? SSL.
If you open a website and you look at the URL up in the corner,
Yep.
and it's got a little lock on it,
Oh, okay.
or it says HTTPS, that's SSL certificate.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just a security certificate. So when Eddie and I wrote and delivered the program Digital Tracks in 2019, it was actually, make sure you've got SSL, but it's we don't have to say that anymore. It just
Yeah,
comes.
it hasn't.
It used to be a thing.
It's not relevant unless you're if you have a website and you're developing it and you're publishing it and stuff like that, and you're not using something like if you're using something like WordPress and you're not using something like Squarespace or Wix, where they just handle all that stuff for you. It is something to be mindful of. You will have to enable SSL and you'll have to get SSL certificates and stuff like that. But on the whole, when you're actually using the internet and when you're publishing stuff, for the most part, it's handled automatically by the web browsers and everybody else. If you go on a website and it doesn't have an SSL certificate, whatever web browser you are using will throw an error, and it'll complain and say that this site's unsecure, and you have to confirm a thing to let you continue.
Yeah.
So it's pretty obvious when there's no SSL on a site, but it's really not that big a deal. Not anymore.
Yeah. I knew that it was something I should know, and I did know that. So.
You're not building websites. It's all right. You don't need. It's okay. You're good. And if your website doesn't have SSL, Google will punish it, so it probably won't be found anyway. Then that was a big thing a few years ago. Yeah, a good question. Lots of people wouldn't have known that, so thank you. So much to think about. There's so much to think about, and I think one of the reasons why I do enjoy being a trainer is that every time I train, 9 times out of 10, when I am developing, so we, just spent a good chunk of hours developing this workshop, part 1 and part 2, but it also makes me go, oh, actually, these are things that I need to do. So that's one of the best things about being a trainer, is it actually helps you to improve your own business, knowing that none of us is perfect. None of us is perfect. I think I said that last night. We don't need, it's better to have 10 million people doing something imperfectly than, 1,000 people doing it perfectly. We actually want lots of people more people trying to do it even just a little bit better than what we've been doing it before. So, Karen, I've issued you a challenge to have a think about doing a presentation about telling us about your experience. You need time to recover from it, obviously. I don't want to throw you in it.
Sure. I'll park that one. That's my latest messaging at the moment, is that I need we look at how we park something.
Yep.
how we might be able to deal with something now, what we might need to park, So, but so thank you, and I'll speak to Thomas about that because I'm sure he'll be happy, but he may also say the same thing. We might need to park that for a little bit.
I like that saying. Let's park that. I might circle back. We'll circle back on that.
Circle back. Yeah, I will
Circle back.
circle back. Park it, circle back. I like park and circle back. I like that.
AKA, no, I don't want to do it, but thank you very much.
No,
Not right
it's-
now.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just having a chat to a supervisor, like a supervisor. I know we're online, but and I said one of the things I have started to do is I need to park something to go, oh, deal with that later. And it's easy in my brain to sort that one out. There's a lot going on.
Excellent. Okay, folks, thank you so much. Thank you, Eddie, for contributing. I've been picking his brain, and thank you for being part of the presentation. Yeah, lots of work to do, which is really
Yes.
exciting. It's really good. We're actually doing a bunch
There's always more work to do. But the question Helen asked before is within any of these kinds of things that you do, you don't want to go excessively detailed. Like if you're trying to maintain asset register and stuff like that, someone has to maintain it. So someone has to actually do the work, and you can't allow it to consume you and you end up not actually doing the work you're supposed to be doing to make money. So there's a line to be written there between
I
making
think-
money and doing things to protect the business. And
Because
no
the
one is
asset reg-
perfect.
the asset register is working on the business. That's it, on the
Yes.
business thing. It's important to do, but it may not be urgent, and it's something we will park that one. We're definitely going to circle back to the asset register.
Yeah.
Oh dear, goodness me. So next week's presentation, I'm not even sure what it is actually. I think that might be a blank week at the moment. Or it's I actually don't have it up, so I should have it up. How is everybody though? Good?
Good. Is that
Good.
preparing for end of financial year?
No, that was a couple of weeks ago. Did you want to watch the video? I've got the video. Video is long.
I'll check it. I just thought when you're saying what's coming up, I'm going,
It
end
is
of
the end of
financial year.
financial year though. Yes, yes.
Karen's going to circle back to that one.
And I will circle back to you all with next week's topic.